Welcome everyone to CDO's Magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, data leaders, and key influencers. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President, Sandhill Consultants, and I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Canada, working with the CDO Magazine. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Esther Munyi, who is the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Sasfin. Welcome, Esther.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure. Now, if normally to get things going, I'll start with a couple of background questions to get our audience a little bit more familiar with you and perhaps the organization. And I really love it when we get international speakers. And so I'm wondering if you maybe have got a little background of your home city, your home country that you can share with our audience.
Sure. Actually, I am currently based in Johannesburg, South Africa. However, I was born and raised in Nairobi, Kenya.
Oh, okay. Right. Both beautiful parts of the world too. So
yes, absolutely. I'm biased, so I will say yes. So yes, I was born and raised in Nairobi, and I came to South Africa many years ago. I will not state when, but I came to study in South Africa because South Africa had really good technology and data sort of courses that I wanted to take up, and it was also closer to home. So that's why I came to South Africa. My initial, I could say, exposure to data and analytics was actually in my first internship ever at the United Nations in Nairobi. And that opened the door for me around data. And then the rest is really just history.
Actually, it's interesting. When I was reading up on your background, and you've been at Sasfin for the last 3 years, a very strong data leader. And so this is an interesting discussion we get, is the progression of someone's career. And it looks like your progression has come strongly from the business side of the equation. But there's also CDOs, CDAOs, data leaders that have come from the technical side of the house as well. From your point of view, how do you think coming from the business side has kind of helped you get to where you are today?
I think it's important. I mean, from a technology, I actually have both.
Right.
Let me say I'm very fortunate that I have both experience and exposure. My background has been mostly in consulting, and in consulting, it's really around how do we solve business problems, or how do we make business opportunities a reality. And in order to do that, it's not about just bringing in the skill sets that you have acquired, but it's also how do you adapt and quickly adapt to the client environment, or using whatever resources you have in order to solve that business problem. So I've been very fortunate to have both sort of exposure, where I have the technology background, and also having the exposure of different clients in many industries and different markets. So the balance of the two has really helped me be able to create that, what I call the bridge. Because in order to be a data practitioner, what I call a data expert, you need to be able to know what the context of the data that you're trying to see and analyze. You cannot analyze data without the context. You always have to have context behind the data that you're looking at. And having the business domain is so important because it helps you quickly to be able to understand the data that you're looking at. So you can be able to evaluate it in the most efficient and the quickest way possible. So that really does help. So I think the two do have to come hand in hand. It's not one or the other. Right. However, depending on sort of the maturity of the organization that you're in, either or could come into play. So for example, if you're in an organization that is really in its early stages of its data maturity journey, having somebody with that technology background could be of an advantage. And that really is because they're able to come in and put together the capabilities and build the foundation that is needed in order to grow that right. maturity. But when you now start to mature and get to a point where you want to get into, your more advanced analytics, predictive, prescriptive, getting into your data science, AI, there is an element of understanding the business that really needs to come through. So it really also depends on the maturity that you are in an organization and the type of person that you need to come in and help you through that journey.
It's great to hear you espouse the benefits of having both a technical and business background. We think that those are, probably the best type of leaders that are the most balanced to bring the benefit to the organization. For today's conversation, we're going to be talking about a couple of different areas, such as strategy and roadmaps, change management, data governance. So let's actually begin. And again, we're after your thoughts, your knowledge of how you see it in South Africa, in your region. But, with your consultative background, with the knowledge that you've had through the years, do you have any kind of recommendations on how an organization should be creating a strategy, an analytics strategy roadmap for the organization?
I don't think there's a one size fits all, but I do think that there's some very basic steps that one must take in order to build something that could be of value. So first and foremost, I think it's important to understand the corporate strategy. Right. This is a crucial step in developing an effective data and analytics strategy, because you need to align the data and analytics strategy with the overall corporate strategy in order to ensure that the organization's data investments are focused on meeting the organization's goals. Right. And then secondly, you need to start from where the organization is, and this is really about understanding the importance of evaluating the organization's current maturity level. And it's necessary in order to identify the organization's current strengths, weaknesses, gaps, and develop a roadmap that builds on those strengths, builds on those things that we do well in, but also address the gaps that exist. But also, I often say that, you cannot have a strategy that's on predictive analytics and AI when you don't even have a simple business reporting or business intelligence capabilities. Right. It just does not make sense. So, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with having a vision around getting, that predictive and prescriptive analytics. It's great. However, it's about meeting today's strategic endeavors or your 3 to 5 year strategic roadmaps. And it's about learning to crawl before you walk, right? Now, how quickly and aggressively you want to get there is what determines the investment and the resources that the organization is willing to devote to that journey. The next thing is it's important to also determine the critical, what I call critical success criteria or measures upfront in order to deliver measurable and sustainable stakeholder value. And this is because return on data investments are not that easy to sustain without constant evaluation of that strategy or of your roadmap. And that's really because of the ever-changing market. Our clients' expectations are always changing. There's always new emerging technology. So it's always important to constantly reevaluating your strategy. It shouldn't just be this one strategy you built 10 years ago and you still want to keep it unless relevance is important. And I also believe that an organization cannot pursue true success on its data and analytics ventures without having someone in charge of that function. And that's really about bringing on board like a chief data officer, chief analytics officer. And this person is someone that has a deep understanding of data and analytics ecosystems and also has the ability to drive that value creation in that function. We applaud you for recognizing and informing our listeners who may or may not be senior executives that may not be in the data function, that you do really need a chief data officer, chief data analytics officer. That's paramount. Someone in charge of the data to be that focal point that can elevate and mature the data aspects of the organization. If we just peel that onion just a little bit further,
from your background, are there any of the kind of key components or metrics that you've seen that you'd recommend when you create your data management analytics strategy that you would see aligning to the overall business objective? So when you obviously when you look at your business strategy, you talk about, it has to align to the corporate strategy. But any kind of components, any kind of metrics that you say fundamentally we start from this side, or fundamentally I'd recommend that you look to achieve the following. Any kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on your strategy, right? So it's back to the initial comment about your strategy and your strategic drivers. So I think the basic ones for me is when you start to see or observe your decision makers using data to make decisions. I think that's what data analytics is about, really. It's about, are your decision makers using data? Are they looking at the insights and using that to support their decisions? And if you start to see that shift, that becomes a huge measure. I think probably your number one measure.
Right.
Your other thing is, I mean, if you think about any business, there's really very key basic, I suppose, drivers around that drive the business, and that's really around revenue creation, cost saving, optimization, and if you're able to align the initiatives to those particular, I would say, drivers. So, for example, if there's an initiative that based on the output, you're able to say that you're able to help drive revenue, that's a measure. If you're able to attach it to cost saving because you're able to reduce the number of man hours somebody has to produce a report, as an example, that's a cost saving. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you see it, data and analytics is experimental in nature, right? It's not always guaranteed that the results that you're trying to achieve are going to be achieved. So it's always important that you keep reevaluating, but also that you try and look at indirect sort of, I would say, value attribution to the business. Direct attribution are things like I mentioned that could be attributed to revenue, to growth, to cost savings, optimization. But sometimes it's not as easy as it seems at face value. So you have to start to look at other type of measures. For example, improving your data quality scores in the business. That is very, it's one measure, but that measure has another impact. It has other impacts to the business. Sure. It's about trusting the quality of the reports that the decision makers are looking at. It's also having clients trust, having client loyalty, improving the client experience, because now they know that the information that we have of them is good quality, is accurate, is valid. So it can be indirect in that manner, and sometimes it's also important to find those measures.
So on behalf of the CDO Magazine, we really appreciate you providing your time today. You're very gracious with giving us your knowledge. And I hope that we can get a chance to come back and share your knowledge and experience in maybe how AI has improved not only your life, but the life of the employees at Sasfin. So I'd like to just thank you for your time today.
No, thank you so much, Robert. It was a really good chat.
Well, it was a good chat. I do believe that. And for our listeners, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you.